Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to my recap and review of Outlander Season 6, Episode 7, Sticks and Stones. And this is our penultimate episode of this season since we only have one to go next week. And holy shit, that episode last night. As you saw in the thumbnail, I finally got my bottle of the Sassenach. When this first came out, it wasn't available in my state. Like when Sassenach Spirits first launched, it wouldn't ship to my state. And then I kind of forgot about it because Scotch isn't really my thing, Scotch whiskey, because I'm a wimp and I can't handle it. But I did finally get a bottle and I'm glad that I treated myself to it. And I did definitely water it down quite a bit with some ice, but I was glad to have it to sip because oh boy, did we have some juicy things happen last night, some crazy tidbits, and mostly I wanted this for my shelf because it's gorgeous. And we won't talk about how expensive that it was, but it was worth it. And now I'll have this beautiful bottle to make a part of my Outlander beauties that I have everywhere. But let us go ahead and dive into this episode because in overall thoughts, I am just so impressed. I can't say it any other ways. Any other different explanation than I was so impressed. And the one last thing that was making me hesitant, the only thing that I was kind of this is the one little thing I'm nitpicking at, man, literally had such an amazing culmination tonight. We're going to get into it. But I was literally wow, if that's the reason you were laying this in place, I buy it. I was completely sold on it. We'll see how it's carried through to the end of this season and where it goes next season, because I do think I'll still have an issue if it's never brought up again, because it's kind of a big deal. But the way that it was handled in this episode, I was I'm totally okay with this. I thought there would be this one thing that I was bothered by, but now they fixed that. So guess I don't have anything to bitch about anymore. What do we know? Okay, let's go ahead. This episode, the pre-credit scene is a flashback to Malva when she's standing up in church, because we were told that this happened in the last episode when she, is confessing to Jamie and Claire, and accusing him of being the father of her unborn babe. And she is talking to the church and she's saying these things where, please look kindly on me and my bastard child. There'll be a bastard in your eyes, but this was done by someone I trust, someone who is supposed to be good. So she's saying these things. She's not directly saying Jamie when she does that speech, because we know that she never named him until she was in front of him. And she's speaking to the fisher folk and, kind of trying to lay the ground. But what I think is fascinating is that, again, I say this every episode and I'm sorry, but I am coming from a book reader's point of view. Everything that she said in that speech can apply to the person who's actually the father of this child. In her eyes, some of the things she's saying, I'm well, I don't agree with that about this person, but everything that she's saying about who she's accusing, it could fit Jamie, but it will also fit the person who's the actual father of this child. And I'm very interested to see how non-book readers are going to feel. I'm very much anticipating the kind of week we're going to have next week. Very interested. So we have that pre-intro scene, then we have the intro. Then we come back to where we were at the end of 2 weeks ago. And Claire and Jamie are in the garden with Malva, and we have Tom and Alan come across them. We have Alan start pointing fingers at Claire, like, why'd you come out here with a knife? And Claire's like, because I was pruning my garden and I was trying to save the baby. Sometimes the baby can still be alive afterwards. Tom asks how quickly she would have died if she suffered. And Claire's like, it would have been very quick. And so Tom's like, so she didn't have time to ask for forgiveness. And of course, this seems so callous. Like, every action that, you know, Tom does, so much of it seems so callous, you know. So he's like, she is a whore and she can't be buried with unconsecrated ground by the church. And Jamie speaks up and he says, whoever this child belonged to, we will see that they are properly buried, properly and taken care of. And Tom says, over my dead body, will she be buried there? And Jamie steps up and he's like, over mine, will she not be? And Jamie has a lot of moments where he has his serious daddy face on, his serious Laird face on, because, you know, obviously there is a lot of shit and a lot of crazy things that are happening now at the end of this season. And it's very much Jamie, he's on the back foot because he doesn't know who the father of this child was. He only knows it's not him. He doesn't know whether it, like, who killed her. Knows it isn't Claire, but there's so many things that he doesn't know, and there's so many things out of his control, and it's not a place that anyone wants to be in, but specifically it's not a place that Jamie's usually in, because Jamie almost always has a plan for everything. Even when things aren't going his way, he has a way to make it work out, and this is one where it's like, what do we do about this, you know? So we have Claire speaking up for her and says, I'm going to take care of her and, you know, get her ready for burial. So they bring, well, no, sorry, I'm skipping it because Tom is like, you know, weren't you angry with her? Like, how did you feel about this? And Claire's like, Malva Christie was full of life and light, and she didn't deserve this, you know. And I know that's hard for Tom to believe because they are all so sure that it's Jamie's child. Malva really sold that in her last, you know, in the last scenes that we saw of her. She really sold that I've said that so many times in a row. So everyone just thinks this is Jamie trying to assuage his guilt, you know, and Claire seems to be the perfect person to have done it because she was so angry. She slapped Malva and she walked out, and the Ridge is all saying these things about her. And Malva was young and beautiful and exotic looking, and Claire was older and, you know, tired, and all these things that they'd be thinking, you know. So we have Claire in her surgery, and we are going to see many scenes of this throughout the episode, to the point where, like, it's like, what are we going to do with this? Like, this needs to break somehow. And thankfully in this episode it does. But she is going to try to clean Malva and, you know, sew up her wounds to prepare her for burial. And she starts shaking and seeing Lionel Brown. And now the appearances of Lionel Brown, guys, they are so freaky. And it is very interesting how they film this. Like, I was really trying to pay attention this time around, and he starts as these, like, blurry, like, far away images of him. We just hear his voice. Like, as we go through the episode, we'll see him, like, be closer and closer to her and more in view, and still he, like, his mouth won't move, but we'll hear him talk until the point near the end of this episode where he's actually, like, speaking right to her face and is in the room when Jamie's there. We'll get to that, of course, but this is the culmination of that haunting of him. And so she doesn't grab the ether. She's craving it, but she goes and gets alcohol instead. She's having these creepy flashes. The house is, like, so silent. You know, there isn't the normal, like, hubbub around the house at all. And Jamie comes in and is having a drink with her, and then Mrs. Bug comes in and says Hiram Crombie is at the door. He has questions. Mrs. Bug's like, what are we going to tell people? I mean, there's this wicked girl who's come in and ruined everything. And they're like, we can stop saying that about her. She's dead now. and Mrs. Bug is the nosy busybody that she is, being mouthy to them. So Jamie goes out, and we have Hiram Crombie accusing Jamie, saying that he's the one who did this, and that, of course, Claire is a jealous older woman, and Jamie is like, you should be very careful what your next words are. And again, we have angry daddy face. That's what I'm going to keep calling it, because I need to make it humorous so that I can handle it. So, yeah. And then we keep going back to Claire trying to take care of Malva and process this and being haunted by him. And this time she gives in and has some ether. Then we go to this kind of family powwow, and we have Bree and Roger coming in, and Roger, there's more talk of like Roger not being the minister, but like he will speak over the, he will speak at her funeral and, say kind things about her. And we discover that Ian is out trying to find out information. He's been poking around and kind of making people mad because they're like, well, we know who did it. Is that kind of feel, which is so frustrating. And then we have Lizzie show up, and they're asking her like first we see Lizzie show up. She has hay in her hair. We're laying the foundations for what's going on with Lizzie this episode. Very interesting. Then we have Mr. Henderson showing up. Mr. Henderson, we know, has slept with Malva. Of course, it can't possibly be his. He's like, it was a while ago. And I was like, no, son, she was quite along. We know the baby was like a big enough child that he, looked like a baby when he came out. And Ian is asking Lizzie where the Beardsleys are, and she's like, oh, they're hiding. And there had been that preview from last week where it tried to make it look like the Beardsleys had, people were going to think the Beardsleys did it, but really we're going to find out more of what's going on with that. But Lizzie is like, well, I'll make sure they come back. Then we have a full family powwow, and we have Ian there, and Ian shares with Bree and Roger and Jamie, and then Lizzie is like serving dinner and grabbing stuff from people, and he's sharing that he found the Sin Eater and that he had some fingers removed, which was very disturbing. And of course Bree pops in and is like, oh, I wonder if that's the finger bones that we saw from the love spell. And they're like, oh, I wonder who was doing that. And then he was like, it very much seems like the evidence is that we don't, they bring up Perry Mason, They bring up Perry Mason, and Perry Mason would ask who had the means, motive, and opportunity. And then Claire comes in, assumingly having woken up from her ether nap that she took, and says, I'm the one who had that. And so Claire and Jamie go, they're in their room, and Claire starts to share that she has a weird feeling. She feels like she's missing something, like you left the stove on, but that doesn't make sense because you never leave the stove on, but you're away from home, and it just is that thing nagging at the back of your mind, and you don't understand. And Claire's saying that she feels like there is a darkness inside her, and she admits that what if she did do this to Jamie and she just doesn't remember it, and Jamie's kind of like, that you would never do that. And one of the things I wrote in here too is I was like, there isn't any evidence that she did do it, because if Malva had come to the door and taunted her and she killed her, why would, there would be blood inside, there would be signs that she, and how would she have gotten her back out there? We're saying she, I don't know, I feel like it's, Claire of course isn't thinking clearly because she's been doing drugs and passing out and all that stuff, but it's more of a, it's more complicated if Claire has done it than if it's someone else that we don't know who it is, I don't know. I'm rambling around in circles because I know who did it, and I'm trying to go off of what the show shows, but I know what happened. but I'm trying to go off of what the show has shown us. And unless she was in that, hazy state, and Malva had come to the door and taunted her, and then she chased her out of there and slaughtered her in the garden, that it doesn't make any sense for Claire to have done it. But we still see Brown showing up, and there's this clock ticking all the time. Now he's not just in the surgery, he's in their bedroom, which is very sad. So we're moving along, and there's still gossiping happening all the time. Mrs. Bug can't keep her damn mouth shut, and there's people whispering always. And then we have the Beardsley and Lizzie drama is starting to ramp up a little more. I can't remember what the line was that happens there, but oh yeah. Ian comes and says that she's pregnant. And so Claire goes to talk with Lizzie to find out who it is and what's going on. And Bree and Roger, there are rumors that are being told to Jemmy that Claire turned Malva into a ghost. And of course it's Mr. Bug. And Mr. Bug apparently can't keep his mouth shut either. They're doing very interesting things with the bugs. That is a part that I believe we'll see more fleshed out with the bugs in season 7. That's my gut feeling, because the seeds are being laid for things that are happening with Mr. and Mrs. Bug, but also they aren't the characters that I imagine, because Mr. and Mrs. Bug, until we learn otherwise, they are very supportive and loving people, at least everybody's faces. We'll say that, because we don't know for sure what they're doing behind the scenes, but they're very, like, straight up antagonistic to, like, Roger at a certain point in this. So, anyway. So, yes, Claire goes to talk to Lizzie, and Lizzie tells her tale, and she tells the tale about how when she was sick, they were rubbing her, like, the oils for her malaria all over her, and under the covers. She ended up being with both of them. It was consensual, but she wasn't fully aware of what was happening, like who was who. And so she was with both of them, and she's like, they're two bodies, and they're one soul in two bodies, and it doesn't feel wrong, and it's nobody else's business. And Claire is like, everything is everybody's damn business, and if people find out, they're going to stone you, whether or not you're hurting anybody, because they don't understand what a little menage a trois would be, you know? But she's like, that doesn't seem right. And Claire's like, well, Mr. Fraser has decided, like, you're going to marry one of them, and you need to decide, and that's what's going to happen. And Lizzie's like, oh, okay. So Roger confronts Mr. Bug about the rumors that Jemmy has been sharing with him, and Mr. Bug is like, I'm getting off the ridge with me and my wife. They're going to River Run. And Roger's just kind of like, why are you spreading these rumors? It's so frustrating. So then we have a beautiful talk between Jamie and Roger. And Roger is feeling very guilty over the man that he killed when they rescued Claire. And he doesn't know if he would be able to fight in the war. And he really is feeling called to watch out for people in the occupation as a minister, as he has been doing while he filled in, you know? And Roger's afraid that his wife won't be okay with it. He's afraid he'll look like a coward because he doesn't want to fight. And Jamie says some beautiful things to him, because Jamie understands the need to have a priest or a minister around. Like, they're a very important role. But Jamie says, God alone is your judge, Roger Mack. And, you know, your wife, Jamie says, I have eyes to see it. That, like, this is your calling. This is what you're meant to do. And Roger's like, well, what if my wife doesn't see it that way? And Jamie says, your wife has eyes too, you know, and he's very much encouraging him to speak with him. And you can tell that Jamie is, like, proud of him for realizing that this is his calling. And I love it so much that we're getting to this. I love that Roger's a minister and that he gets to, you know, feel close to his father in that way. You know, he has so many good memories of the Reverend Wakefield, and it's really wonderful. So then we have the funeral for Malva, and we have Roger give a beautiful message. Tell us who among us hasn't sinned. And though Malva wasn't able to be a wife or a mother, that doesn't make her less in the eyes of God. Like, it was very beautiful. So then they get up to carry her casket out, and Alan is like, no, Jamie's not going to help. So Ian steps up to help. Then Claire goes to get the box of the child, because there's a sad baby coffin. It's so sad. And Alan freaks out, calls everybody bastards, grabs the baby's casket, and goes out. And then Tom actually has this very interesting, like, look on his face. And I hope this is all, like, putting pieces in place for the reveal will hopefully be next week. And when he sees how Alan reacts and the certain things that he says, like saying, like, it's your fault that she was taken away from us, and that, you know, and so he's, like, holding this baby casket in his arms very awkwardly. And Tom just kind of has this, like, look on his face where he, like, looks at Alan and that and whatever. They take the baby out, like, the casket out and Malva, and they bury them. And then we take a little bit of a break from the drama of that, and we switch back over to Lizzie and the Beardsleys again. And now Jamie is laying down the law to Lizzie and says, you need to pick which one you're going to marry. I want both of them in front of me by, like, the end of the day. We're going to talk about this. You're going to pick one. You're going to get handfast, and then that's it. And she's like, it's one soul and two bodies, she says to him again. And he's like, well, I don't care. I don't want people saying stuff about you. He's like, people are going to say that you're a whore. And she's like, I'm not. And he's like, I'm not calling you one, but everyone is going to call you one, and I'm not going to let that happen. So we're taking care of this. And it's very clear that, like, this is something Jamie can do. Jamie can make sure that this young woman that he's been looking out for these years, that she's taken care of, and that there won't be anything disparaging said about her. That's going to happen. So then we meet out in the stables with both Kezzy and Josiah, and Jamie literally grabs some straw, and they draw straws, and he handfasts her to Kezzy and says, Josiah, you're going to leave by the end of the day, and you're not going to come back until the babe is born, so that nobody is questioning whose child this is. The end. Boom. We're done. And we'll come back to that in a second. Then we have Roger. We have Brianna and Roger talk about him being a minister. And Bree puts forth some valid concerns. And again, just being so level-headed. I'm so proud seeing the Bree that I really love. And she's saying, like, you and I both had parents who were always on call. You know, my mom would drop everything and go to one of her patients, and not that she shouldn't, because, you know, they're generally people in great pain, you know, or dying or something. But she's like, she was never off to her patients. And with a minister, you know, she's basically saying to you, like, how am I going to be a minister's wife? I can't bake anything. You know, like, what am I going to do? I'll have to share you with everyone. And this is one of my favorite lines from the books, and I'm so happy to hear my Roger Max say it, because he says, whatever I'm called to be, I was called to be your husband and a father first. And whatever I want to do, or whatever I do, it won't come at the cost of my family. And I love that. I absolutely love that. And then Bree is like, well, I'm Catholic. How are your people going to feel about that? And he says something like, they can go to hell. I don't care. And I love that Bree is like, well, hopefully you can come up with a more diplomatic answer by then. But they laugh about it, and I love it. I'm so proud of them. It makes me so happy. So then we have Claire sneaking out to do ether again, and she ends up, or no, she says she's going to have tea, and that's at night. But then the next day, we have her down in the surgery, and she is trying to put the ether away, and Lionel shows up, and this is the most intense. Like, he is, like, in the surgery with her, right in front of her face. Now his lips are moving. He's talking at her. She runs out of there because she doesn't want to take the ether again, and Jamie sees her. And he's like, what's going on? And so he goes in the surgery. He's like, don't go in there. And, like, he walks, and, like, Lionel's, you know, he, like, walks, and Lionel's, like, right there. And so we have this beautiful conversation. And in my opinion, a really smart, well thought out, and beautiful culmination to this ether storyline that has been kind of plaguing us through this season, that a lot of us who are book readers, and even some who aren't, because there are lots of people that I've seen comments from who don't quite like that this was happening, even who haven't read the books, you know? And so Jamie's there now, and she says to him, what if I did kill Malva? Because what if I wanted her dead? And so she confesses that she took ether when she saw her walking towards the house. She locked the door. She didn't want to talk to her, and she would put herself to sleep because she is having visions and she doesn't know what's real. And she says, what if I didn't kill her, but all of this is my fault because I'm not supposed to be here, because I was selfish and I wanted to be with you. What if this is the reason? You know, I compartmentalize everything. I have a box for Frank and my job and my patients and my grief and all of these things. And it's just too much. It's too much. And she's like, what if my selfishness to be with you has caused these bad things to happen? And it really is a bigger question for Outlander, the series, book series and show as a whole. What are the ramifications of a woman going back in time, taking herself out of her time and creating new life literally in their time, you know? And that's when Jamie sets her straight and he says, well, what about our family? Bree wouldn't be born. Roger wouldn't have a wife and a son. Marcelly would have never been with Fergus. We wouldn't have, you know, there wouldn't be these grandchildren. Like, all the people you've saved. Without you, our whole world crumbles into dust. Love that so much. And Jamie asks her, he's like, remember after Wentworth, and I was so broken, and you helped put me back together again. You didn't let me lock you out. And he's asking her, please don't lock me out. We can face it together if you tell me. You know, and she says that again, like, what if it was a sin that we're together, my selfishness? And he says, if this is a sin, I'll go to hell and thank the devil for tempting you to be with me. I mean, don't we just love Jamie? Don't we just love him? We love him, the king of men. Because everything he said is so true. We can hear her fears and we see them spill out. And a lot of the, things Lionel, which of course we know is her own subconscious, is echoing back at her, are these fears for her that anytime a bad thing happens, she has somehow fucked up the past. She's fucked up someone's life. But there's so much good she's done that wouldn't have happened if she wasn't there, and it's true. Just the fact that the Ridge exists and all these people who at this current point are a bunch of fuckers right now spreading rumors and not believing them, but they wouldn't have this home. They wouldn't have this community that they are so willing to break down, but it's beautiful, and that wouldn't be there if Claire didn't love Jamie Fraser, and makes my heart so happy. Makes my heart happy, okay? So then we have this last little push here. We have Lizzie and the Beardsleys show up at Roger and Bree's cabin in the middle of the night, okay? And she asks Roger to handfast her to Josiah because she's with child. And somehow, these two didn't know this yet. They don't know that she's already been handfast to Kezzy. So she gets herself handfast to Josiah. And we know what they don't know, and that Lizzie is now handfast to both Beardsleys, and she's put herself in a polyamorous relationship, which is kind of boss. Side note, when I first read Breath of Snow and Ashes, I had never read a menage before, and I remember thinking how bananas it was that she was married to two brothers. If I'd only known the romance future I had ahead of me. It's amazing. Okay, so then we have our last scene, and so I forgot to mention this when we popped in earlier, but Roger is going to go to one of the cities to see what it would take for him to get ordained, and in this, Bree and Jemmy are going to go with him. So they are packing up their wagon. It is very important for us to have them removed from the Ridge because of some stuff that's going to come up. They are definitely not there when it happens. I do believe in the book this is a divergence because I believe the reason that they're not there when this happens is that Bree and Roger have already went back to the future. You know, I know that I've dropped that before. Like, they eventually go back to the future because of a reason, which we aren't there yet. I'm pretty sure that reason will be in the next season just because of how the timeline has worked. But we need them to be removed because they can't be there when all of this is happening. So they're on their way to do that, and Roger says that Bree has a gift for Lizzie and is asking them to give it to her. Like, I handfast her to Josiah last night, and I wanted to give, here's a gift from me and Roger. And Jamie's like, I handfast her to Kezzy last night or the other day. And they're like, and Roger's like, oh, I didn't know that. And he's like, doesn't matter. We'll deal with it later. She's going to stay married to Kezzy. Josiah's going to get out of here. Jamie's like, this is what's going to happen. We're going to do it. And so Roger and Bree leave. And then we have Jamie and Claire getting back to the big house. And a mob of people are coming from Brownsville. And that was the end. And based on the previews for the finale, we have the last stand at Fraser's Ridge. Oh my god. Oh my god. So, prediction. So, a little bit of like spoiler talk for the book, so if you don't want to like hear that, but I'm just going to talk about my predictions for how I think this season's going to end, and how I think it'll be a little different from the book. We'll see. So in the book, this does happen. They come and they capture like Claire, and they're going to take like Claire and Jamie to town for her to be tried for this crime of killing Malva. And I don't want to spoil who really did kill her, any of that part of it. But I mean, we end up leaving the ridge, and Jamie has to do a bunch of behind the scenes stuff, pull Lord John in, do all of these things to try to get her out of this situation, because like it's not like they have any proof about who did it or what happened. Like, they don't have anything. So Claire actually ends up like in custody, like waiting to serve trial, and then a person steps forward, claims responsibility, some stuff happened, and then they get to go home. And once we're back at home, we find out what really happened. The way I think it might be different in the show is I think we will stay at the ridge the whole time. I think Jamie and Claire are going to have a showdown with them. I think that the person who stops it in the book will be the same person who stops it here. And I don't think we will actually like have to go to a different town for this. I don't know. I don't know if I'm right. That's just my prediction, is I think this is kind of going to be like a bottle episode where Jamie and Claire are stuck in the house, stuck on the farm, kind of having a like, we see the gun coming through the window, kind of having this like showdown there. We still haven't seen Donner pop back up. Could he be popping back up? Could he be part of the reason that the Browns are making this move too? Like, what's happening with that? Who will help rescue them? Like, how will this start? Like, I don't know. But my thought is that this whole episode will take place on the ridge. There will just be, different people trying to show up to like help her not be put to death for this or whatever. Like, I don't know how else to word it. That's a weird prediction, I know, because I can't like say I really don't want to spoil it for anybody who is the father and like who did the killing and like all that, because it was such a shock for me in the book. But I do want to hear like final predictions if you haven't read the books. Okay, final predictions. Who do you think is the father of the child? Who do you think killed Malva? Give me those guesses, because I'm very interested to see who knows and who hasn't looked it up and cheated. But this was another amazing episode. I'm sorry that this wrap up was so like chaotic, because holy crap, it was so good. And I feel like this whole season has done such a great job that all I do is like recount what I saw, which is fine. I love the conversations we get to have. So yeah. So my plan too for the finale is I will do a finale recap this way, and then I'm planning to do a live show where we just talk all things Outlanders, talk about theories, gush about stuff. And I have a couple friends that I might invite to that as well. That could be really fun. So anyway, thank you so much for watching this. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you like this video. And we'll see you next week for the finale. Bye.